Welcome to Conscious Eye, living in authentic connection and harmony with self, others, and the world, featuring Ravi and Savitri.
Hello, Savitri,
Hello, Ravi.
and welcome back to you and our listeners.
Welcome back to you as well. And we are in the ambience of solstice. Yeah,
One of the most magical times of year.
we get two of them, and we're in the winter one right now. So, um, what's on your mind?
Well, we all know this is the darkest, night of the year,
Mm-hmm.
darkest day, longest
Sure.
night, the
Mm-hmm.
darkest hour. So it's a we leading up to this. Maybe I know some folks have maybe struggled with the dark hours, feeling ready for bed at 4 o'clock in the afternoon.
I love that.
Same. Um, we do all the things, to bring light into our homes and our lives. But this is a time to really focus on the light within.
Hmm. And there's so many different ways that people recognize and celebrate solstice. And some don't notice it at all. So I wanted to give a shout out for those that solstice might be, well, why are we talking about solstice? But there is a significant number of people on the planet that feel that it's an important time.
That was something I found very interesting. This piqued my curiosity because solstice to us in the Northern Hemisphere, or if you're in a Southern Hemisphere, it's a pretty big deal, right? There's a big
Mm-hmm.
variance in the length of the days and the nights as we go through our seasons. And I got very curious, looking into some other cultures and some other areas where there's not that variance in the seasons, in the days, those closer to the equator. So it was fascinating to me that this idea and concept, the concepts that we have built around solstice, how unique those are to the cultures in the areas that experience the astrological and earth, what's the word I'm looking for? S te terrestrial.
There it is.
And the terrestrial cycles.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And, all of our holidays, or many of our significant holidays in both hemispheres, uh, are attuned to the cycles of the earth, even if we attribute them to other ways of being. And it is a result of feeling that divine connection with the energies that are beyond our ability to touch and feel with our senses. And so it becomes not just intuitive, but it is a real astronomical event as we are looking beyond Earth and out into the sky and look at the relationships that we on Earth have with the other planets and our sun, and the emotion that we share in this family of bodies that all share the central point of the sun, of Surya. Yeah.
Now, we all know that Christmas happens around this time of year.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always found that fascinating because as I grew up in out of the traditions that were practiced in my home, um, I started realizing that the birth of Jesus doesn't really line up with that story.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what piqued my curiosity into a deeper learning of what this time of year is all about and how it was used, dare I say appropriated, but used to bring in a celebration of the birth of Christ. And that's fine. But I think if we look at the what's really going on and where what the practices, the traditions of this time are rooted in, we're looking at the rebirth of the sun, sun.
Right. Yeah. And, I'm looking at a list that I found of different cultures, and many of them are heliocentric, meaning that not only are we in orbit around the sun, but everything looks to the sun as the source of our life here on Earth. And so there were cultures, and still are, that look to the sun as a source of energy, of life. And so there are celebrations at different times of the year. When you mentioned in the Northern Hemisphere right now, we're having the dark days. So we are grieving the loss of the sun. And in an agrarian society, back in the day when that was what everyone did or relied on even more personally than we do today. We get our food from the grocery store, and that comes from a farm somewhere, who knows where. I mean, I guess it's
We're
on the
rather
label, but we are
disconnected.
removed from that process. And at the time when people were looking to the sun in those cultures, it was really important for them to maintain a deep awareness of the cycles of nature in order to be able to survive, whether they were hunters and gatherers or whether they were uh, agrarians or farmers. The cycles of Earth, more or less, mostly more, dictated what they did in their life and how their actions on the Earth were performed. And most of it was around surviving and focus on the body and the family and continuing the generations of life, uh, getting enough food, having a safe place to live. And so today, there's still um, an honor of that. Like Stonehenge is a great example where the sun shows up between the stones at different points at the solstice and at equinox. And it becomes a way that they were able to notice when the seasons were changing. It was an affirmation more than anything else. And it still is. And people gather to see that sunrise at those different points of, uh, of the year and within the framework of those stone configurations. So that's just one of them.
Yeah, right. So on the 21st, around that time,
Mm-hmm.
typically, the sun hits its lowest point in the northern hemisphere. We have the longest night and the shortest day, and the sun seems to stand still. And when it returns or rises again, a few days later, it's celebrated and we have that renewal of life, the affirmation of renewal, the affirmation that even out of our darkest times, we come back into the light and the yes, tied to I think, of course, physical survival, and there's a lot of spiritual um, attachment there as well with, renewal, rebirth. Um, it's just a time of
Hope. It's a time of
yes,
hope.
hope.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we know that we can always use a nice dose of hope, regardless of what our lives are like or our culture is at this time. That's something that sustained humanity from whenever that beginning was, which we're still finding as they look back and look back and look back. They're adding years to the time that humans have been here on Earth, supporting themselves. But there are also some interesting other cultures around Christmas, like the Yule, where the Nordics and the Germanic cultures um, honor that sun's return. And some families have what's called a Yule log in their home or outside their door, where they may place candles in it um, and decorate it as an honorarium for the sun returning after the longest day at solstice. So that's a different type of ceremony, but it's interesting that the log, what is used to generate fire and light,
Mhm.
was considered a symbol for the return of the sun. So, yeah.
Symbolizing that warmth and
Hmm.
light and life. And, our tradition of bringing evergreens into our home
Oh,
spaces,
yeah.
again, an affirmation of life
Hmm.
in the dark times. And then, of course, many cultures, there's feasts and ceremonies to celebrate abundance and gratitude. And, again, the bringing lights and bonfires into your space or into this time. It's just that affirmation of the light returning, that we don't live in darkness forever, only a season.
Yeah. And, Diwali came in October this year, which sometimes it's a little more aligned in November. Uh, but that's also a return of the light. And we light the little diyas, or we have candles. Um, and the the festivals and the festivities often have to do with um, things that we have maybe not even thought about in our Western culture, but we do the same type of thing. It gives us an opportunity to decorate our homes a different way. It gives us an opportunity to have a reason to clean. Clean the house, get it into a pristine condition. And it's an honoring of where we live, of our space, and a regenerative energy of that goes beyond just our physical life and the whole idea of family. It extends into honoring the space that we live in and honoring the energies that surround us every day. And you know, there was another thing that I noticed when I looked just to see what some of the other cultural celebrations are of solstice, and found one from the Hopis and the Zunis, where they also have a very significant honor ceremony where there's dances and prayers and stories and feasts. And so, coming into the sun's return, if we look at that as a thread of truth that holds us together across the entire globe, it's amazing to just look at the different ways that the sun is celebrated. And for some of us that maybe don't have a celebration, um, we may just be grateful that we're going to have more daylight. It might be as simple as that. Yeah.
What I found so fascinating, I did a little reading up on some of those cultures that are in other parts of the world, on
Hmm.
other parts of the globe, where they don't experience the variance of light and
Yeah.
dark.
Hmm.
And I was curious, it was very interesting to find that there are still celebrations that honor the conquering of darkness with light. So in the Balinese culture, for example, they have Galyugan, and that is on the Balinese calendar every 120 days. And I found that very interesting because 120 days, if you think about, that's about the time in a gestation cycle for a human that you maybe begin to feel a baby kick or move around.
Hmm.
And it's the time of the first signs of life start showing. And what I noticed in Bali is it's constantly rebirthing. It's fascinating. I mean, I had the opportunity to be there for 21 days or
Hmm.
25 days, whatever it was, last October. And every day it seems a new blossom is forming on a tree and the blossoms fall. I mean, it just rains flowers.
Oh,
Um,
beautiful.
there's there's a constant renewal, rebirthing in that part of the world. And so I found that interesting that this uh, celebration occurs every 120 days, and it is the festival of celebrating the victory of Dharma over Dharma. So the celebration of light over darkness or
Hmm.
good versus evil. It's a time when ancestral spirits are said to descend and to visit their loved ones. There's, of course, ritual and feasts and celebrations that last for about 10 days, and then the spirits, the ancestors, ascend again. So,
Hmm.
what's fascinating to me is that we've this exists throughout the world regardless of the amount of light or balance of light and dark. um where we're experiencing very short days, there are other cycles to measure this phenomenon, which is
Hmm.
just part of our human experience. So it's fascinating that we can live in completely different environments and still be connected, like you said, through this thread of being, where we're looking for that balance and that um, holding out that hope that the light returns, that light that always balances itself out with the darkness.
Yeah. It's interesting you mentioned 120.
Mhm.
And in Vedic astrology, one of the things that we look at is called a dasha system or Vimshodari, and it is um, looking at the different planetary influences throughout a lifespan of a human, and it goes for 120 years.
Mm, mhm.
And we know that very few of us, if any, live to be that age. But there's some dynamic there in that idea of a life having a duration of 120 years, and you mentioning the 120 days. There's a quality there. I might have to do a little research and see what kind of connection there is there, because that number is very important, and it's very well defined in Vedic astrology. For each of the planets have a duration of time where they are more influential to us based on when we were born. So, some of us might have been born with more influence with the sun, some of us might have been moon or any of the other planets, and then it goes through a sequence, and it's the same sequence of everyone, even though we enter it at different times. So, just a little sidebar on that 120 just resonated greatly with me. So, thanks for giving me another thing to take a look at. And
Well,
I'll get back to
in
you on that.
in Kundalini practice, that is the time. So we'll practice Kriya sets for
Hmm.
40 days. That is what first breaks the habit. 90 days, you confirm that new habit. And at 120 days, you solidify it,
Yes.
making it the new consciousness permanent. To me, that's the time where you really start to begin to embody the practice and it becomes encoded rather than, it becomes more of the default than it does the uh, thought of response. It becomes of the more natural default reaction after
Hmm.
120 days of practice. So it is a significant number in, many schools of philosophy, I would say.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
And in nature,
That's
that's
right.
echoed
Yes.
because they're connected, all of
Hmm.
course, always. I found another really fascinating culture to be the Dogon people of Mali and how their practices around this time um, are centered around their culture has a deep understanding of Sirius, the constellation Sirius. And uh, again, it's just celebrating a transition of a new agricultural season. So although there's not maybe the discrepancy or the variations in, warmth and cold, there's a new season and it's a time of welcoming back ancestors and recognizing um, their ancestors and their myths. Uh, were very fascinating to me. So just looking into, again, other parts of the world that have their celebrations, it's rooted in tied to the thread that weaves through the fabric of humanity,
Yeah.
even though our experiences are unique to each area, each cultural belief, spiritual or religious beliefs, those get layered in to make meaning,
Hmm.
but there's something deeper that is connecting all of us that is the unique but also universal experience of being human.
Yeah. Yeah. And talking about the sun, it's always, of course, this makes perfect sense, in the same region of the sky, and it is in a nakshatra, which is a region of measurement, also called a lunar mansion or an asterism, and a nakshatra called Mula. And Mula is interesting because it's aligned with Sagittarius, which we know is a very powerfully energetic and spiritual zodiac sign. Has some very interesting parameters around it. But I took a look at last year. Sun at this time last year was by himself in Sagittarius. This year he has Mars, Venus, and Moon close by. So that makes a difference as to how the energies that we're receiving influence us. And of course, Sagittarius can be any house impacting any area of our life, depending on when we were born and where our chart lines up with ourself. So, looking at that difference and seeing that the sun was in Mula, and Mula has an interesting reputation. Some have a tendency to go, oh, Mula. Others look at it in a different way. But if we could just take the bottom line of what it's about, It's about pulling out the roots of those things that no longer serve us, to use a cliche that we hear a lot of these days. And pulling those roots out can happen by us. We can make those choices, or they can be made for us, maybe a sudden surprise. But what that does is it opens space. So if we look beyond the dark days where we're pulling roots out and look at what's there when the light comes back, that's where we plant our seeds to grow and flourish and create new endeavors and become aligned and purified on our path. So, just like anything else, there are really two sides to every story. And you can choose to be on the side of, oh, it's so dark all the time, and oh, the roots got pulled out and I'm devastated. Or you can say, look at the opportunity here, and the light is coming back, and we now can plant and have new light to nourish these new seeds. So, looking at our year for this year based on solstice, or if you want to just take it through the winter season, that works too. There are a few highlights. It's a time to because of the energies that I talked about, the other planetary family members that are in there with the sun, we've got an opportunity to be ambitious in a way that we come into gratitude for what we have and hold that ambition in balance with gratitude so that it doesn't become ego driven. And also, there's an opportunity for us to really bring our focus into the climate and our natural environment this year. So there's an indicator that way as well, coming into making some decisions. And they may feel like they're rather quick. You might not have all the information you need for the decisions, but with Mars in there, there's going to be some impetus to go, let's get this going. And you may need to fall back on Venus and say, yes, but it needs to feel good and it needs to be pragmatic and balanced and beautiful and all those things that Venus brings to you. So, long story short, it's a year of responsibility. So, our Dharma is going to be top of mind. And the thing that we want to make sure that we take a look at is as these opportunities begin to come our way, and this will be a year of more opportunity, we have to watch what our ego's doing with that. And so we'll be balancing a feeling of being gifted, and you know how sometimes that can blow up the ego a little bit and go, oh, well, this is great. We just want to keep a lid on it and be mild and have a neutral mind around the things that are coming to us. But it looks like it's set to be a rather dynamic year. So there may be things that come to us that are sudden and unexpected, but we have the opportunity with some good energies to be able to make it work for ourselves. So yeah, just to give you a little forecast for this year. Yeah.
That's exciting. And I know we're going to talk a little bit more about the new year in our
Yes.
coming episode. So that was such a lovely teaser for that because there is so much coming. And how can we use those energies to our highest purpose? And something that stood out to me in all that you just said is there is a part of us, right? When those roots get torn out or those parts of us that we shed,
Mm-hmm.
it can be a very tender time.
It is.
Letting go of those parts of us, ourselves that don't serve us is hard. So I want to recognize that for folks who are new to shadow work or, you have, are maybe having a type of spiritual awakening or getting more in tune with yourself. It doesn't feel great all the time. And that's okay. And that's normal because when you lose those old parts of yourself, even though they were pretty much harmful to you, they were comfortable and they were safe for you. And letting go of those and, burying them, if you will, in the earth, or letting them go dormant, just remember that those experiences helped shape you to and make you to where you got you to where you are today. They made you who you are. They got you to where you are today. And when you are able to put them to bed, they can, as they decay and reach that state of inertia, nurture the next part of you. So that's part of our shadow work, right? Is
Yes.
when we think of death and dying as being, bad and scary, but think of the leaves that cover the forest floor, and as they decay, they bring new life to the surface. So it can be a very tender time, and becoming that new person or that new elevated self um, is not the easiest process. So it's a time to be very tender and gentle with yourself as well.
Yes, absolutely. I agree with that. And that's something I think we come back to this portion of this podcast and listen to what she just said when you feel a little overwhelmed and feel like you really don't want to change. Because I think what you said about our shadows are familiar. Okay, we may not be comfortable with them. We may not like them. We know they really are maybe self-defeating in lots of ways, but at the same time we know them. And we don't know what it would be without them. And because we're humans, we we want that comfort, even if the comfort is not in our best interest. So I'll try to remember to timestamp this so when things happen, we can come back to this episode and cue up your conversation about that because I think it's really powerful. Thank you.
Easier said than done, right?
Of course.
And those times when you're in it and you're trying to find your way through the fog. And those are the times we can be very hard on ourselves, or there's a lot of grief to work through. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
remember to be patient, to remember it's part of the process. And we'll talk more about this coming up, but
Mhm.
this isn't necessarily the time to run headlong into all your new projects and
That's right.
expect them to take off and be successful. We've got that nurturing period to go through. So you plant the seed, it doesn't become the oak the next day. Um,
Yeah.
there's a lot of tending that goes into the process and a lot of patience.
Yes,
And
that was another word I didn't mention that maybe I had highlighted. I do. That is something that this year we will need some patience. Mhm.
and when that energy comes on very strong, we want to be gung ho. We want to be, moving forward on our plans and into the things that are opening up for us. And it might be just a time to remain neutral, keep your brain and your body in neutral for a bit, and allow the growth to occur at its own pace, at its own in its own natural way.
Yeah, and kind of transfer that maybe to the whole concept of solstice, where we know that there is a cycle. The cycle takes a certain amount of time. And even though we're in the longest dark days, we trust that the sun is going to come back and give us the nourishing that we are missing right now. So,
That
yeah,
there will be a new season.
a rebirth. Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Satnam to that.
Yes, and thank you everyone for being with us today as we dove into a lot of different territory having to do with solstice. So please comment, like, and I invite you to share the podcast. There's a share arrow at the bottom of the video that you just click on, and then you send it to someone on email or someone in lots of different social media choices. So yeah, If you think it's something that someone might resonate with, it's easy to get it to them.
Like, share, and don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already
That's
and
right.
ring the bell so you can get notifications. And as always, thank you for joining us to our friends of the pod. And if you're new, a listener, thank you for joining us. We're excited to continue on as we go into the coming year.
Yeah. Namaste.
Satnam.